I recently attended the Estrella Damm Gastronomy Congress in Melbourne. Estrella Damm, Spain's oldest beer, is brewed using the original 1876 recipe and using only the best Mediterranean ingredients. Estrella Damm is a beer that is committed to working with and for the gastronomic community and works with some of the world's most innovative chefs. At this year's conference, I caught up with chefs Monique Fizo from Haikai in New Zealand, Dave Verheuvel from Embla and Peter Gunn from Ides. Dave Verheuvel has worked with Gordon Ramsay and Marcus Waring in London as well as at Bentley Bar and Restaurant in Sydney. He now runs the award-winning Embla in Melbourne. Dave, welcome to G&M.
Thanks for having me.
Monique Fizo is one of New Zealand's finest chefs. Trained in New Zealand, she now runs Haikai in Wellington, where she combines traditional Maori cooking with modern gastronomy. Monique, welcome to G&M.
Thank you for having me.
Peter Gunn is originally from New Zealand and started his career in a fast food chain. He has since developed his skills at Ezard, the Royal Mail and Attica. He opened Ides in mid-March 2016, establishing himself as one of Melbourne's premium chefs. Peter, welcome to G&M.
Thanks for having me.
Who or what inspired you to cook?
Who or what, or food, my I guess just my excitement around food encouraged me to want to cook it. And then the people that I started working with and still work with today inspire me to cook daily. I think when I first started in commercial kitchens, I started, as I believe most chefs should, and that was doing the dishes.
Okay.
In restaurants.
Yep.
And from there, started working with chefs who were cooking, and eventually, at the same time getting tired of doing the dishes or getting, good enough to do more than just the dishes, I was able to then start to do prep work and then learning about the ingredients and working with people there. So I would really say that what inspires me daily and why I cook is because of the ingredients and the people that I choose to surround myself with.
Very good.
Who inspired me to cook and what inspired me to cook? Well, I was always surrounded by food growing up, and my grandmother used to rope me into the kitchen a lot to help prep like lunch on a Sunday. So in fact, and I was actually like a bit cheeky and didn't actually want to be, to help. No, I wanted to watch cartoons. But I'm really glad she did, because then just by doing those tasks as a young child, at 5 and 6 years old, I got really interested in like how food would change when you applied heat to it, or why do onions make you cry? Why does garlic taste like this raw but tastes like that cooked? And also, I just always liked eating, so I would be getting out cookbooks at a really young age and just studying them, even though no one would usually let me allow me to go and cook in the kitchen because I was too young. But I was just fascinated by the whole thing, and how you could make these incredibly artistic structures and interesting things out of food. So, and you fast forward from those initial, getting those little bits of inspiration at 5, and then suddenly you find yourself at 32 about to do this, and so that's the short version, of how it all happens.
I grew up in an era when there was a TV program called Yang Can Cook, and I think that was probably my first exposure to how fun cooking can be, and probably I think that in New Zealand we have this I guess a woman called Alison Holst, and she's probably the Kiwi version of Margaret Fulton, and my mother used to cook from her recipes all the time, and she was quite a pretty prominent celebrity in that kind of food scene back in the the 80s, and eating food like that and eating the food that Mum created from that is probably a big influence as well.
How would you describe your style and philosophy on food and cooking?
My philosophy, while what we put out in both restaurants probably doesn't look it, it's actually quite simple. We try not to mess around with things too much, but we just make the choice to not do what everyone else does to those ingredients. So we work
as close as possible with farmers and producers and artisans that make the product. I try and keep that gap as close as possible. And at the end of the day, I think we just try to cook food in both restaurants that is as delicious as possible.
Excellent.
Yeah, my style and philosophy with food is, while food needs to be delicious, and it should be, I also like my food to have a bit more meaning to it. So I use the food as a medium for creative expression, as much as I use it as a medium for feeding people. So a lot of people come into the restaurant and, you know, each dish is inspired by not just the ingredient, but also by intertwining Māori culture and Kiwiana and my background into everything we do. So that's my philosophy, is that food should be about connecting people as well as feeding people.
My style of food and the philosophy of cooking, it's starting to focus more around simplicity, the quality of ingredients, and sort of close to immaculate presentation. There's, over the course of my personal restaurant career, like of my since I've been a head chef and an owner of a restaurant, I must, to be completely honest, there's still days where it's still being bedded down and still being cemented, my philosophy, because I'm still learning, I'm still going through the processes of experimentation with food, but slowly I am establishing the fact that what I care most about is just the quality of ingredients and the flavour that comes from doing very little to them. And that comes with time. Okay. You know, I'm not afraid to admit that. You know, there's a lot of sustainability practices that we keep in check, and there's all of those things that create a quite an ethical style of cooking that we have. But for the, you know, word for word, it's simplicity. And
has your food style changed over the years? And
totally.
you want to speculate where it's going?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you start out cooking, you to an extent, I think you emulate the people that you've worked for, because you think that that's what your food is, but it's not. It's someone else's food that you've been making for years. When you learn, and that's a great way to learn. I think it takes you a couple of years on your own to really kind of break into, you know, what you think your own food is.
My style has definitely changed. It's gone from having complicating shit too much to really just letting the couple of techniques speak for themselves. It's interesting, you know. It's quite easy to, in this world, like, well, in this current day, you get one shot with a lot of people, like one shot with media publications, one shot with reviewers, one shot with critics. They come, they have a go, they taste, and then they think that's it. You know, a lot of time, people are not looking for or can see the growth in the direction of a restaurant or of an individual chef. So it's definitely from the earlier days of what I was cooking, when I was trying to put too many things on a plate and trying to cook something a little different than other people were cooking just for the sake of it, to how it is now, and those concepts and those sort of practices that I established just then have been simplified to now that when we come up with a dish, it's just I believe uniquely different from the get-go without having to force anything.
Oh, it's changed so much. I think even, you know, when I think about Hiekai, when it first started in 2016 as a pop-up, to what I'm doing now, you know, it's almost embarrassing looking at the first dinners. You're like, what were we thinking? We thought that was good. People, amazing anyone even liked it. I think I've definitely found my own sort of rhythm and style and what I like to do, and I definitely muck around less with the ingredients, and instead of trying to force things into shapes, you know, take a carrot and brunoise it, and, you know, being like, you know, because that was your training, is you spend so much time on knife work. It's just kind of like letting things be, and then just letting them organically tell you like what that ingredient wants you to do with it, rather than trying to force it any particular direction. It's just like, well, taste the thing first. Taste the carrot. What does the carrot taste like? Well, let it decide where you're going to go, rather than go, I want the carrot to do this thing, which is how I used to sort of treat ingredients and then wonder why it didn't taste any good, but it looked pretty, and it was like, well, it's because you're not listening, you're not paying attention.
We're here at the Estrella Damm Gastronomy Congress. Most people associate fine food and dining with wine or liqueurs. How does beer enhance the flavour of good food?
Beer enhances the flavour of good food in a really interesting way. We use beer throughout our menu to add like a slight bitterness to something. So for example, a glaze, we'll make it out of beer instead, because we get an interesting hoppiness and a different taste profile through that, which then lends itself quite well if you've got a piece of fatty fish. Having something with like some hoppy zinginess through a glaze is a bit more interesting than just a sugary sweetness. We also, with our pairings, you can either do non-alcoholic pairings or alcoholic pairings, which we should really think of a better, sexier name for it. But on the alcoholic pairings, we actually, quite a few of the matches are beer matches, as opposed to just it all being wine, which is what restaurants traditionally do, because there's just some courses that the pairing's better with a beer. For example, like desserts actually pair much better with beer than a sickly sweet dessert wine, as far as I'm concerned. So I actually find beer balances out a lot of dishes really well.
Okay.
Oh, I think in the past, people were very tied to those formats of, this is a wine match. And you might get a few things in there that are differing, but I think that in this day and age, the field is so open. There's having a beer with the effervescence that it has in the middle of the monotony of a wine pairing is a great way to break it. The dish that I'm doing today is a perfect match for that. So the bubbles and the effervescence that it has really kind of breaks the olivey kind of salty notes that my tuna dish has. So.
Okay.
I think food and beer matches just as well as any liqueur or wine. There's always been a big part of food, and like when I speak of my earlier days or even current day with my family and friends, there's always beer around food. Like we're always eating and drinking beer. Like in my house as a youngster, my mum would drink wine and my dad would drink beer. So there's always been a combination of the two. So I've never really, because I have such an open mind when it comes to cooking and drinking, I don't actually I don't think any different of it.
What do you eat on your days off?
Normally whatever someone else cooks me. My partner is Sri Lankan and she's an amazing cook, so I like to eat any kind of curries and sambals and roti, anything.
So I've got 2 kids. I don't work Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Those are my designated family days and the days that I cook. And there's a lot of pizza, there's a lot of pasta, there's a lot of rice. Very simple stuff when I cook. I do like, it's kind of what I'm going to be demonstrating today is like really don't eat a lot of meat when we do. I make sure it's really a good cut, good piece from a reputable place, and just simply grilling that with a salad or some chips is pretty tasty.
Right.
On my days off, I do love a good taco. On my days off, it's either tacos, fried chicken. My day off is usually a Sunday, so if my parents are around, I'll usually try to convince mum and dad to make a roast. Usually they oblige because they know I work long hours, so they're like, just. So usually I'll try to convince them to cook something. Or if not that, then I do really enjoy just like eating a pizza and just chilling out.
Very good.
I keep it pretty simple on my days off.
You can chill out with a beer.
Yeah. Yeah, beer, pizza, or beer and tacos. That's a good day off. Don't need much else.
Thank you, Monique. I'll
No
let you get back to your
worries.
cooking. Thank you, Peter. Thank you
Thanks.
for joining us.
Cheers.
Thanks. Very good. Okay. Well, thank you, and we'll look forward to your demonstration this afternoon, and look forward to cooking with beer. Many thanks. Thank
Nice
you,
one.
Dave.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.